Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to help you get the Zettelkasten of your dreams on your work table beside you. Well, we are in a series view from the boxes, which takes a look at a Zettelkasten from the point of view of the physical objects that make it up. What goes into a Zettelkasten has a lot to do with how you work with a Zettelkasten, so this just gives us another way of looking at the processes of a Zettelkasten from the point of view of what you do with the pen and the cards. This is another rabbit hole. In my last episode, I talked about how the Scheper lumen numbering system differed from mine, and how it came out of a fundamental difference in what Scott primarily uses his Zettelkasten for, and what I primarily use my Zettelkasten for. And we talked about the difference in concepts of the primary use for Scott is to create works, to create projects, to provide the information and the words and the content that he wants to put into projects that he's creating. Whereas my primary use is general knowledge gathering. And so the projects that I produce are produced in a different format, and it results in different style of main cards. It permits a different style of numbering, and it results in a way of creating that on the one hand is vastly different from Scott's, and on the other hand is virtually identical. So you want to see how the two styles could be far apart and close together at the same time? Come on over to the down-facing camera and I'll show you. Okay, here is an example to get us going. This is a card that Scott shows in his video, how numbering works in a Zettelkasten, the anti-net style, and this is part 2. I'll put a link to the video in the show notes. And as you can see, this uses the same style that I was telling you about that Scott likes to use when I was discussing his numbering system yesterday. He has the topic, thesis writing, and he's found a category for the thesis writing. So when he gets a new card that he's trying to place the new card, his first question is what category does it go in, and then later on he'll find the best home for it in the category. We're going to see how fundamentally different this method is from the mechanism that I use. So I'm going to give you an example card, and we're going to develop that card together so you can see how my approach is at this stage is quite different. Then we'll see other places where it's quite similar. Okay, so here is a sample card, and to keep with the Scott Scheper theme, this is a quote from Scott Scheper from one of his Right to Freedom calls, and this one dates back to June of last year. And the point that Scott is making, which is in black here, is he says belief is the foundation of action, and so people need to have a belief before they'll take an action. And so as creators of content, we have to ask ourselves, if we want people to take the action of buying our book, what do they need to believe before they take that action? And then the part in purple is my reaction. Well, my first reaction is, well, I don't want to ask myself what they need to believe, because to me, if you're saying I only care about what they believe, does it matter whether it's true or not? So I would rather say it's what I want people to understand, because I don't want anyone to believe something that isn't true. But then I took the advice directly to heart for my Writing with Emotion project. And so I came up with my reaction to Scott's question that he poses. My book, Writing with Emotion, will help you write in a way that will resonate with your reader. And that's what I want my people to understand, so that they know what benefit they can get if they take the action of purchasing my book. So now, where am I going to place this card? And I want to show you a little bit about the method that I use to place the card. I cannot show you my method without jumping ahead a little bit into the index, because I rely heavily on the index for placing my card. But we will come back to the index in a more complete way when we get to that box. Now this card, besides not having a number, it's missing a very, very important component for any main card in my system. I have the personal requirement that every main card needs to have something written on the top line. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. It's not a title. I call it a tagline. It's a common phrase to call something like that a tagline. I'm just borrowing the term. But to me, when I use the term tagline, I mean something very specific. I want a phrase, a short sentence. I want it to call up this entire card. And just from reading that tagline, I want to know what this whole card said. I want it to pop back into my memory. Oh yeah, that. I know what that's talking about. So for me to construct a tagline to go here, it's going to need to talk about belief moving to action and what belief I want my potential book buyers to have. So here is the tagline that I'm coming up with that I believe solves that question. So here's what I came up with for a tagline. The needed belief is that writing with emotion, my standard abbreviation for my book, helps you write to resonate with reader. Now my next step in this is to identify the key words in my tagline, and I underline them with blue. Okay, so now I've identified belief, my book, Writing with Emotion, write, resonate, and reader. Now, I won't need write and writing, but I've underlined it. So now my next step is to take a look in my index for each of these keywords and see what I already have in my Zettelkasten that carries on a conversation with this card. Because the central theme in everything that I add to my Zettelkasten is the concept of cards communicating with one another, conversing with one another, and hopefully generating fresh ideas by the exciting conversations that develop in my system. So I'm going to be pulling a number of cards out of my index. This will be a sneak peek at the index, but it won't shock you what it looks like. When I looked up belief, I didn't find anything useful because it was all about faith-based belief, and this is more about motivation. So instead, I took a look at understanding because my gut instinct was that I really wanted to substitute understanding for belief anyway. So when I look at understanding, I come up with a couple of interesting cards already in my system that seem to relate to this one. One of them is this V3A, dialogue with book buyers so they understand the character traits. This is very relevant. It does assume that they've already purchased the book, but it's totally related to the idea of understanding the character traits, which my book, Writing with Emotion, is all about. So that's a possible link up. And this number 4 here, very foundational, emotions make memories, understand them well. Well, now this ties us right smack into my whole section of the Zettelkasten, which is about writing with emotions. So this one is very, very relevant. So I've got 2 different cards that relate to this one. One of them might turn out to be where I want to place my card, but I want to make note of them both. I used to make notes of them on scraps of paper, but nowadays I'm making notes of them directly on a colored card just in case they turn out to be important links. I have to write the number down anyway, so why not do it in a way that's potentially useful? Okay, so I've captured 2 potential links. I still don't have a card number for it, but my directory card is underway when I do place my card. So I've looked up belief. I'm going to skip Writing with Emotion because that's the book itself. And I'm going to go to the keyword write. No surprise, I've already got 3 index cards filled with the word write or some variation of it. I'm going to search through them now. Here's one right here. Strong emotion is the fuel of great writing. I'm going to add this one to my directory card as a potential link. I've got that one. Let's see if there's anything else. Now here's one that jumped out at me. I can't honestly say that I think it ties exactly, but it just wants to be included. Write as though your voice needs to be heard. It does. I think I want my readers to know that. And it just really is begging to be included in the conversation. So why not add it to my directory card? What's the harm in that? So just for the cost of taking a moment to write it down, I get to include this thought in this growing conversation. Okay, so that did it for the word write. Now I'm going to look at the word resonate. And I did find something under resonance. The brain connects to others via the vagus nerve. Now we're getting a little bit into the biology of how writing with emotion actually functions down at the level of biochemistry. I think I'd like to put that into the conversation as well. Okay, so now I'm on to looking up reader, and again, I've got 3 different index cards covering that key term. So I'm going to search for anything that might be of relevance here. But I found nothing specific to add from reader. So now these are my choices of where this card might want to find its home. So my next step would be to possibly pull these cards if I needed to, but because these are taglines, and therefore just reading the tagline brings the whole card back to me, I don't necessarily have to pull any cards at all. Just I would have to pull a card if the tagline had gone cold and I didn't connect with it anymore. So because of that, I am able to select from among these and know that this one, strong emotion is the fuel of great writing, is the place where this card wants to join in. So I'm going to underline this one in blue to indicate that this is the card this one has chosen. So now I have to go pull this card and any possible directory card that it has. So I need to pull this card and the card that immediately follows it to know what number this card is going to get. This card would like to be 3A, 7A-2A, but that number might already be taken, so I can't just write that down here. I've got to go see. Okay, so here's that card. I know right away that it's a very old one, in part because it's a 3x5. I started out with 3x5 cards and very soon switched to 4x6. But the other reason that I know that it is an old card is it doesn't have all of my normal elements. It just seems to be some thoughts and with a tagline added probably much later in time when I started using taglines. And the card is basically saying, you know, if you could cast into fiction some of the agonies of life, they wouldn't tear at you so. And I'm not sure if that's a quote from someone else, but it does reflect the fact that emotions in a story is a large part of why we write, and it's a large part of why we read. So it's really kind of a central theme, even though it looks like a kind of a scattered, disorganized card. I would never wish to not have this card because it's a piece of the history of my Zettelkasten. But when I pull this card to find out, is 3A, 7A, 2A available? Whoa, look, it has a directory card, and it's already a part of an interesting conversation. I've got a 2A, 7A, 2A, 2B, 2C, right? And look at the interesting conversation. Strong emotion is the fuel of great writing. Writers of tragedy must pray for sufferers. Show emotions non-verbally or sketch the struggle. Vicarious emotions. Memory of refrigerator guy. What's that one about? I already know what my card's number is going to be. My new card is going to be 3A, 7A, 2D. I know that because D is the next available number. But I can't just go on without figuring out what memory of refrigerator guy. Gotta go look that one up. Okay, so here's the main card, and we'll start with the information that came from this source. I'd have to pull the source to see what it is, because it's not coming directly to mind from the abbreviation. From the refrigerator guy in the last Mad Men episode to the amygdala modulating the visual cortex, science and social history both agree that emotions solidify memory. In a TV episode, this is my reaction now. In a TV episode, the emotions can reside in the character's tears or in the viewer placing himself on the refrigerator shelf as the light goes off. Place your reader on that shelf. And here's my tagline. Vicarious emotions solidify memory of refrigerator guy. Well, I think I'm going to have to go to the source and find out what? Well, the book is Impossible to Ignore, Creating Memorable Content to Influence Decisions by Carmen Simone. My card tells me I need to look at page 179, and it gives an example from Mad Men. And it's at a kind of a group therapy session where people are taking turns talking about poignant moments in their lives, and sort of a side character gets up and tells his story. I work in an office. People walk right by me. I know they don't see me, he laments. And I go home and I watch my wife and my kids. They don't look up when I sit down. He continues his tear-filled confessional. I had a dream I was on the shelf in the refrigerator. Someone closes the door and the light goes off. And I know everybody's out there eating. And they open the door and you see everyone smiling and they are happy to see you, but maybe they don't look right at you and maybe they don't pick you. And then the door closes again. The light goes off. So what Carmen Simone is talking about with respect to this card is the way of writing that sets up emotions inside of your reader, even though there is not one word describing an emotion at all in the story. But can't we all just picture ourselves sitting on the refrigerator shelf and going unnoticed and the door closing and it's cold and it's dark? We can so easily put ourselves into that position. And when I look at the card that came from that, where they're talking about the vicariously lived emotions, I realize that this very card, quite possibly more so than this card that I originally picked, is the one that ties most exactly to what I'm writing about here. Because that's what I'm trying to explain in my book, Writing with Emotions. By analyzing character traits, my goal is to help writers of every skill level create works that put their readers on the refrigerator shelf and become extremely memorable. Now, does that mean I want to actually make this card 2C1? Well, you know I could, but in point of fact, I'm really happy to have it here as 2CD, even though this could go under this one, because all of these taglines reflect the same concept, that strong emotion is the fuel of great writing. And so this whole card, this whole collection of thoughts, together with this whole collection of thoughts, reflects what I want the readers of my book to understand and to believe so that they'll buy my book, Writing with Emotion. And here's the book that I'm talking about, in a shameless plug. So now I want to go from something that is very different between Scott Scheper's system and my system, where Scott basically is going to look for the appropriate category where the topic ought to go and then find the card's correct spot within that category. And you can see that my method is totally conversation-based. But when we come to this card here, this is very, very similar to my directory cards. He has a number of card addresses, and so do I in these links. And here in these card extensions of this number, these are all links, and these are all links. Very much like mine, these are like these guys here that start with the 4216, and these guys here that go off in different directions are like this one that goes to a different area in Scott's Zettelkasten. So he also uses directory cards, although I've seen him call them different things. In the video where this is drawn from, I'm not remembering exactly what he calls them, but I believe I've heard him refer to these as branch collectives. I just call them directory cards. And now for the final way in which Scott's work is really quite similar to mine. When he's ready to write, he's going to be pulling all of his cards out onto his desktop, arranging them in the order that he wants to present them, which in most of his work is actually his card number order. My desk is going to look quite similar. I'm going to have cards all over the place as well. And my cards can have any numbers because I pull them from my Zettelkasten when I'm ready to write. And when I am ready to write, when I'm ready to use this card in my writing, by virtue of the card that it goes with and all of these conversations, and the cards that it might have gone with and all of these conversations, look at the depth that I have available to add to my one tagline. I have so many different ideas and so many different directions that I can go to add richness to my writing when I'm using this one line, and it's all there right in front of me to grab. So I hope you enjoyed this rabbit hole into how I work with my Zettelkasten and how it contrasts with the way that Scott works. I do have to say that it's way slower to create the kind of main cards that I create with all of their parts and pieces, and yet it is so much richer that it's incredibly productive. And I don't spend a lot of time creating cards that I don't need. I don't need to create cards stating the obvious, and I don't need to create cards just for my written work. Scott often will talk about how when he's ready to write a new piece, he'll take out a stack of blank cards and outline his work onto his cards. That is not my way of working. When I'm ready to work, I go to my Zettelkasten and I pull cards that relate to what I want to write. Where am I going to pull them from? From my themes that I look up in my index, from the individual cards, and from the directory cards associated with those cards, because I have a very, very well-developed concept just sitting here on these cards. Well, I think we've wrung out just about all we can from the main box for now. So next time we're going to dive into the index box. I've showed some index cards from that box, but we're going to take it from the viewpoint of the index box itself. So come on back for our next regular Not Down a Rabbit Hole podcast in this series. See you then. Bye-bye.